into SAP HANA. We looked at trying to understand what are the options that are available. Majorly, we looked at SLT replication, the basic idea of how we could handle SLT, and we've seen what is the method that will be used with data services. All right. So today's session, we will go ahead and look at how to go ahead and create a schema and how to move data into the SAP HANA. All right. So when you have the access to the server, you could right click on the server here and then log on to the system. Just give me 1 moment. Just make sure you mute your systems, guys. Organizers, everybody please mute your system. We don't want any disturbance from anybody. So you would have the SAP HANA Studio. Once you are in the SAP HANA Studio, make sure you have the logon credentials. If you have registered, the logon credentials will be given to you. So you can right click on the system option here and then you can give in your password. This will bring you to the main section where you have the systems. Alright. So the studio basically can support you to connect multiple connections to the different HANA systems or different landscapes of HANA as well. You will have one interface which is called as the HANA Studio. To make any changes specific to the system that you're working on, make sure you select the system in here. Here we just have one system, so select the system here and then you can click OK. For now what you will find is all of this is grayed out because not any system is configured. So here you see that no system configured. So if you click on this select system and select the system that you're working on, then all of these will be activated. All right. So yesterday's session we basically tried to understand in theory as to how is it possible to move data from older versions of ECC systems into SAP HANA using the SLT server. We've also looked at how do we go ahead and move data into SAP HANA using data services tool to move data into SAP HANA. Right, so that is basically what we've looked at. Today's option will try and see how to go ahead and move data from let's say an Excel sheet and also see what is the concept that you have when you're trying to bring in data. How do you create schemas and how do you go ahead and keep data independent from each schema. Alright, so here if you go in here, now you will have like a normal database, you will have schemas that you could create here. Within the catalog you will have different schemas and you can go ahead and create the schemas that you want in the catalog. You cannot directly right click on the catalog and create a schema, but usually you will go into the SQL console. We have tried to understand what each of these objects is. when should you use a validate, activate, and all of these options very briefly. So if you go down to the second part of the studio, what you find here is, let me just close all of these. So what you find here is the SQL console. Alright, so most of the keys that you can give is through the SQL console. Alright, so here I want to create a schema. So I'm going to create, or click on create schema. I want to give a name of the schema. Alright, we call it as HANA underscore, let's say SEPT, September. And here you have an option called as execute. Okay. So when you click on execute, this is going to create a schema for you. Just to see that schema, you can right click on the system and refresh it, or you can refresh it directly on the catalog also. So you can see that it creates a schema called HANA underscore SEPT in here. You have the option to create column views and models and query sources, functions, indexes, all of these options. But majority of times when we move data from one system to here through data provisioning, you will find that all the tables are listed down in here. Okay, just like any normal database, you will be able to create the tables in here. So once you have completed using it, you can close the SQL console. If you want to create tables and structures, if you are good with SQL, you can go ahead and create a table in there, or you can create your structures. It is possible to do it directly from the SQL console. So here, let's say I have some data from here. I have a table called Mara, and I have some data from the Mara table in here. I want to move this data into the SAP HANA into my own schema. Okay, so I want to go and attach or bring data from here into my SAP HANA system. In this scenario, what I'm trying to use is, this is, if you right click and go to properties, this is a comma separated value file, right? So go into the SAP HANA system. You have an option called as import here. So when you click on the import, you have multiple options here. SAP HANA content. If you open this, you will find an option here called as data from a local file. You can import data from a local file like an Excel or a CSV file from this option. You can select this option, click on the next button. This will ask you where your file is, so you can browse to the file. So if it's there on your desktop, so here let's say there is one which says Mara, which is material master, and I'm going to use this file right now. I click on OK. The field delimiter is set as comma. In case you want to change that based on the file that you have, you could go ahead and change the delimiter as well. If there is a header row, you can select this as header row exists. It is on the first row, so start import your data from the second line. Okay. So you can select this option, ignore leading and trailing white spaces. Usually sometimes you will have blanks and you would want to avoid that, so it's more like trimming of your leading blanks and trailing blanks. Now you can mention whether you want to send it to an existing schema or you want to send it to a completely new schema by selecting the target table. So let's say you're selecting a new schema, you're loading this file for the first time, you select this option. You will see the schema name that you have created, BODS underscore, HANA underscore SEPT. So I have selected that in here. you want to give it a table name, you can mention that here. You can mention Mara underscore as a CSV file. So I can select that in there and I can click to the next. If I already have a file in there, I can select the existing and then I can push that data into the same table. Alright. So here I'm going to click on next, and you will see that my source columns are in here, my target columns are in here. I can mention what could be my key fields in here, okay, and which should be not null columns. I can mention that here. If you see also, you have an option to choose whether you want to create a column store or you want to create a row store. Okay, so let's say you want to create a column store, and you could see that there is a preview of data that is available in here. Okay, so if you go all the way down, you could see the fields that it has selected from. You can, by default it gives a one-to-one mapping. In case you want to change the mapping, you can go and change the mapping as well. The data that is being moved in, you can take a look at the preview of data in here for a few rows, and then you could, if you are sure about it, you can go ahead and click on the next button, or you can go ahead and say finish. So the next button gives you a bigger picture of the preview, and then you can click on the next button or finish to move the data into SAP HANA. Now there are different kinds of jobs that you will find. By default, you will find that there is a screen here to show you the process of the jobs that are happening. It will give you a status as to what has happened on the job. So here right now what we're doing is importing a flat file, and it says that it has completed successfully. There are multiple options of messages that you get. You might have completed it successfully, or you might have completed with errors, or you might have failed a particular job. So all of that will be seen here in the job log. You can look at history as well. So in case there is a failure, you will find that in here. Now you can close this screen, and to make space available, you can keep this screen this way. The default screen that you are logged in is the quick launch because you're in the modeling section. The schemas are in here. So you've just loaded some data into the schema. Just refresh that schema or refresh the system, and you could go into the catalog, HANA underscore SAPT is the name of the schema. You would have your tables in here, and you can see when you right click on it, you can go ahead and say open data preview, and you could look at the data that you have just loaded. Okay. Now when you can see the data in here, you will also see onto the top that there is an option for maximum rows. So here by default you have a maximum of 200 rows that you can see as a preview. Okay. Now if you want to change that, you could do that in the quick launch in the manage preferences options. You have quite a lot of options where you can go and change the options as to how much data you want to look at, what are your validation rules. All these options can be looked at in here. If you have the access to the server, just go through the manage preferences ones. Okay. You have default preferences, so in case you want to change something, you could change it also. Now one more important thing about looking at the preview of data here is that it allows you to look data in 3 different ways. One is raw data, where it will show you data in the format of a normal table. Alright, this is your raw data. The second option that you have is distinct values. For every column, what are your distinct values can also be looked at. So if I click on Matner, it will tell me that these are the different values that are there, and these are the distinct values that I have. Let's say ERNAM, I have these as my distinct values. Alright, so if I look at my material type, you have these as my different material types. So I can see it'll give me a count of each of these. Alright. So this is the distinct value button. Raw data, distinct values, and again you have an option for analysis. Before you go ahead and start reporting your data, you want to look at how data will appear for the end user. There is a smart way of how you can define it as a analysis or a small chart that you can see here. You have multiple options to build different kinds of charts. Just that you should be able to go ahead and place the values. Value is where you have all your measures or key figures, and label axis is where you have all your dimensions. Since we brought in a master data, you wouldn't really want to go and put them in here. But if you go ahead and move your objects in here, you will find that it will show these in the form of a value in here. Alright, so you can drag these, and if you have a value field, if you drag them in, you will find that it will show up these in the form of a chart. Okay, you have multiple different kinds of charts that are available here, so you get an idea of what the end user is going to look at, basically a preview of how the report is going to look at. Once we go ahead and create a view, then also you will have a similar option, raw data, distinct value, and analysis. So whether you're looking at a table or whether you're looking at a view, you will have this being created. Alright, so I have just imported one table, okay, and this is in the content folder or catalog folder. We have used the schema HANA underscore SEPT. Okay. Now once I go into the next level, this is my content folder. Okay. The content folder will basically have different packages, just like how you have a namespace to organize your data. If you are familiar with BW, you have info areas. If you're familiar with data services, you have something called as projects. Namespace is a common name that you usually use, but here in SAP HANA you call them as packages. Okay. You could go ahead and create packages basically to organize all your data. You could create a package within a package. If you are usually doing an RDS solution or you're working on an RDS solution, you can import a package and that will have different objects that you can create. A package can be created directly from here, or you could right click on the content folder and you could create a package. Just like how you have the option to create an info area within an info area in BW, you could create a package within a package inside the content folder. The only thing is you will have to have the privilege to create all of these options. Based on the kind of role that your user is created with, you can also control whether a user has the capability and the authorization to create a package within package. Alright, so the roles for the users are created in the last folder called as security. When you open the security folder, you will find the users and the roles. There are multiple roles that you can assign, and you can see the list of all the roles in here. Okay, so let's say I have been given a modeler role. So I have a lot of options in here. I have part of roles, I have system privileges, object privileges, analytic privileges, package privileges. So in the package privileges, if it is controlled that I shouldn't be able to create a package within a package, then I will not be able to create a package within a package. I can control whether I should be able to see data or objects only in my package, or I could view it from others' packages. I could control all of these. Application privileges and privileges on users. So these are what are defined into the roles, and the roles are assigned to the user once they create. Now here, once we get to the content folder, and if you see, every time I open something, this is opening as a new tab in here. Alright, just like how you have it for Internet Explorer or normal browsers, you have these open in individual uh, tabs. You can close or open these tabs in here. Alright. One more thing, I have closed all my screens in here, and I would want to go and get back to the original screens that I want. Alright, I want to see when I kind of validate my data or when I activate my data, I want to see the process of what is happening here. I want to see if there are errors or warnings. So I want to get back these screens that I have in here. Go into the HANA Studio. On the top you have the Windows option, so click on Window. You have an option for Reset Perspective. Alright, so when you click on Reset Perspective, the system's going to reset the perspective. It's going to bring back all your windows again. Okay, so if you think that you've lost on a few windows, so don't get scared. Just click on Windows and Reset Perspective. Okay. So right now we have created one table called Mara underscore CSV in the schema called as HANA underscore SEPT. Okay, so you can go into the content folder and I'm going to right click on the content folder here and I'm going to say new, click on the package option. Okay, so when I click on the package option, I have these different options. I have the asterisk, which means that is the default one that I need to create, and then I have description, delivery unit, original language, and person responsible. Okay, now this is also dependent on the delivery unit. I will just give you a little understanding about what a delivery unit is. In your quick launch window, you have an option. If you go down to the second part of the screen, you have something called as a delivery unit. So if you click on delivery unit, you will find that you could create or you could go ahead and use an existing delivery unit. What exactly is a delivery unit? Now you must be used to the, if you are working with SAP, you have the option of transports. Alright, how you can transport your objects from one landscape to the other. Alright, a similar feature in a transport, you can see that you are able to group multiple objects under one transport when you move it to a different landscape. The concept of moving objects across the landscape can be used in SAP HANA as well, and the concept here is to use delivery unit to group multiple packages. So the objects that you have across multiple packages can be linked one to the other using delivery units, and you can move them across from one landscape to the other. You can click on the delivery units in here and say create a delivery unit. Alright, so you will have to give in all this information. The default one is just the name. So let's say we want to create one that says HANA underscore delivery unit, say SCPT. Click on OK. So you have this one created, the vendor responsible version. So you can choose what you want. So let's say version 1 objects can be linked in here, so you give a version 1. Basically allows you to keep a track of what versions you are transporting and what objects you are transporting, so it allows you to keep all of that information. You can also mention what are the packages that you want to assign to the delivery unit. So when you are moving a delivery unit, you can assign all of these packages and move it across from one landscape to the other. So in this scenario, I'm going to add my package, which is HANA underscore SCPT in here. PQRST. We've not created a package, so I'm just creating the delivery unit, HANA underscore delivery underscore SCPT, and say close. Now, I go into my content. I right click on my content folder and I'm going to click on the new option to create a new package. I can click on the package and mention a name, HANA underscore BW underscore SAPT. I'm going to give a description. By default, if you just click on the area in here, it will copy the name as a description in here. You can choose to give a description. Okay. You can choose what delivery unit you want to give. Okay. Just now we have created one which says HANA underscore delivery unit underscore SCPT. You could give that. The original language you can choose to give the English language United States, or you have different languages in which you can create. In case you create it in English, you want to change it to a different language later on, you could use the migrate option. The person responsible is you creating it as system, and then you can click OK. You will find that you have created it as HANA underscore BW underscore SCPT. So there is this window here called as the properties window. You will see that here. Every time you click on the object, any object that you use, you will keep getting the properties of that particular object. Okay. Akhilesh, you have a question?
Yes, Emmanuel. I just wanted to check, these steps which you're going through. I mean, did you go through it yesterday as well? Because these little things. I don't know if we can remember the sequence of the steps, right?
We didn't go over anything yesterday. I just basically understood the studio.
Okay.
And we just went through theory of what are the different extraction methods or data provisioning methods. This is the first time for everybody.
Okay. So.
Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So I just so basically we what we could do is we can go through the recording and then follow the steps right after this class. That's
definitely the recording will be sent to your emails. You could download that and then you can go through the steps. I haven't documented it as screenshots, but I'll try to do that for the session so that it will become a little more simpler for you guys.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Satish.
Yeah, hi. I think I had the similar question as Akhilesh. So I know you just said that you will try to, send screenshots, but do you have any, typed up sequence of instructions that, I mean, basically similar to what you're just speaking, right? Replaying it again and then trying it in a computer system.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how easy it's going.
At the end of the session,
play, pause, try, play, pause, try, and then rewind, and then,
at the end of this session, we will go ahead and type this through on an Excel sheet. All right. So you guys can take a snapshot of what we have created step by step. All right.
Okay.
That will make it simpler for all of you to follow.
Yeah.
So in that way, you can understand that. Yeah, go ahead.
Or even if you want to, just take some time offline, not today, but not during the session, but offline, and when you're before the session, right? If you can share like a PowerPoint presentation or something which lists the sequence or the steps, right? Then
okay. The reason is I do not have a clue as to how many of you are registered and how many of you have the access to the system. So I'll do that. Sure, I'll do that. Thanks for the feedback.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Any other questions? Alright, so we have just created, for people who have joined in today or who this is the first or this is the session that we're doing it for the first time. So if this is a little confusing, I will go step by step. Alright, so we have created a package, and the whole idea of creating a package is to group all the objects that you create under one package and then be able to organize all of these objects together. Okay. Now it follows the steps. I will go ahead and give that in here as an Excel. Probably that will make it simpler. SAP HANA is a database, and you will have to bring data into it to see the processing speeds and to use the speeds at which it will process and calculate data. So which means that you need to bring data into it. Okay, you could use it as a database underlying an application, or you can use the appliance itself. Even though you're using the appliance itself, you have to make sure that data is processed into the system. So the first step that we will have to do is provisioning of data. Alright, so you have to bring data into the SAP HANA box. What we have done today is, first step is to bring in a CSV file. Right? How do you bring in a CSV file or an Excel file into SAP HANA? You have the option under the contents. So you see contents in here, right? C-O-N-T-E-N-T, content. You find the import option. So under content, you have the import option. The import option allows you to do a lot of things. So once you go into the import option, you have the SAP HANA content. Okay. So here you have SAP HANA content. Under the SAP HANA content, you have the first option which says data from a local file. So data from the local file, you could click next and it will take you to this window where you can select the file. You can import a local file. The file has to be usually an Excel file or a CSV file. Okay. You can browse to that file. You can define the field delimiter. You can select the header rows. Again, you can play with this header rows option. And then once you go ahead and define how many header rows and how many rows you want to skip, you can mention that. And here is the important thing, into which schema you want to load the data. Okay, you can select the schema where you want to load the data, and then you could go ahead and load the data in here. If it is a new table, you can mention the table name here that you want to create. If it is an existing table, you can just mention the schema name here, the table name here, and load the data. Sometimes we've observed that if you're trying to load too big a files of CSV, it doesn't allow you to load such big files of files into the SAP HANA directly from the option that you have with the SAP HANA box itself. It could be because of the allocation of buffer memory, or sometimes the file itself it's not able to process. But for surely, in case you're using data services as a data provisioning method, you will be able to process the files directly from there into SAP HANA. As we go along, I will show you those options as well. Okay. So the first thing to understand is to bring data into SAP HANA. Building models and all that is later. But the first step is to bring data into SAP HANA. So we will paste this training in that fashion. First, we will try to understand data provisioning. So the first step here is, in case you have flat files, how would you go ahead and do it? Okay. So that's why I showed you how you can bring in a file. Let's say in our scenario, I have brought in the Mara file. So I have brought that table into the schema that we have in here. We've created the schema. The schema can be created using the SQL console, and based on that, I'm trying to create a package and then trying to create a model. Okay, I'll give you the stepwise as we go along as well, so that you will be coherent with what we are actually doing inside the studio. Okay, so I'm hoping that you were able to follow till what we have done so far. The catalog basically allows you to create schemas in here. You cannot directly create the schemas from there. You will have to create it through the SQL console, right? The SQL console allows you to create structures and also SQL statements in here. But if you want to create a structure directly from an Excel sheet, you can directly do it from the import option. The next step is to create your own space, and that is you create your own package in here. You can create the package from here, or you can create a package directly by right-clicking on the content folder that you have. Okay, so the content folder allows you to create your own package. Okay. Now let's say under the package, you right-click on a package, you have a list of all the options you could do. You could create a package under a package, or you could create an attribute view, an analytic view, a calculation view, an analytic privilege, a procedure, and a decision tables. On the modeler, these are the main aspects that you will be creating. Okay. So for a simple example, just to show you how this thing works, I'm going to right click on the package and I'm going to click on new. I can create a new package to create a folder within a folder, or I can create any of these models in here. So just to start off, I'm just giving you an idea of what we do here. I click on the attribute view. This will allow me to define whenever you see a star, it means it's a mandatory column. You need to fill that option. So here I am going to create an attribute view. Okay, I can choose what kind of view that I want to create here. Let's say I start off with an attribute view, or I want to create an analytic view. I have the option to directly change that in here. So the three views that we can create are available here. I have talked to you about what we create in the SAP HANA Studio. The data that we move in will be always there in the catalog folder. Okay, this is our persistence layer, and this is where we have data on the RAM. That is the only time where we are storing data on the SAP HANA system. The rest of the times when we're using data, we are going to create views. Just like in normal database, when we create a view, we create just the structure. We will choose what columns we want to use. The rest of the columns we're not going to use. So in a view, just like how you define it on a normal database, you will create it here also as a view. Basic structure, they will be consumed at runtime and at the reporting environment, but they will not hold data anywhere. If you are from a BW background, you will see that it's a little different because in BW you will have data stored in multiple layers. The data store objects and the info cubes and all of these are available. But here it is just like how we have data on the PSA. The persistence layer has the data only. The rest of the times it's going to use data from there. We're going to create views on top of it, and then we're going to consume those views. The first of the views that you create here within SAP HANA is called as the attribute view. It is similar to dimension that you create within BW, or similar to a characteristic that you create within the BW system. If you're not from a BW environment, it is just like creating a small dimension, or creating a smaller table from an existing larger table, specifically choosing what fields we want from that table. Alright, so here I have an option, HANA BW underscore SCPT. I am specifically mentioning that because we're going to use it from the table that we have created, HANA underscore SCPT. We have defined a table called Mara underscore CSV. The Mara underscore CSV has quite a lot of columns in here, and we will choose only a few of these columns to be used. Alright, so I'm going to the content folder now. We have the model or the package created. I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to click on new. The first option is the attribute view. So I'm going to click on the attribute view, give it a naming. Alright, Z Mara underscore CSV underscore ATTR underscore view. I'm going to give that name. If I want to copy it straight into my label, which is nothing but description, I can click on it and it will automatically copy that onto my label. You can give a description if you want to. Okay. So here I have different kinds of attribute views that I can create. This is a standard one which we are trying to create. You have an option where I can do a derived, where I have an existing attribute view and I can derive my view from there. You're basically keeping a copy, just like how you have if you are from a BW system, how you can create a template from an existing info object already created. So if you want to derive it that way, you can give the option for derived. If you want to use it as a standard, this is how we create it, and then you have an option for time dependent attributes as well that you can create. So first let's start off with the standard attribute that you can create, attribute view. It is similar to how you create a dimension. So I'm clicking on finish. The system is going to open this particular screen. So here if you see, there is an option for data foundation and there is an option for semantics. Okay. Data foundation is the layer where you can bring in tables and you can define joins between them, or you can use individual tables. Basically you are modeling a view in there. Okay. On normal databases or on SAP, you go into a particular screen and then you will have to define how you're creating the view, what are the common fields and all of that, right? So here the data foundation is where you do all of that. So you can click on the data foundation layer, and if you see here, there is a plus symbol that is going to come up. Okay. So the plus symbol allows you to choose the kind of table that you want to use within your data foundation layer. Because I have closed this property window here, I can see that the property window is opened here. Okay. So I'm going to click on the data foundation. So it will automatically show up the kind of join that I want to create, the label that I want to create, all of that information. First thing, you will want to go ahead and click on the plus symbol here so that you are able to bring in what tables you want to bring into the data foundation layer. You have the option to click on add objects, click here, and you can go ahead and type in the name of the table that you want. Depending on the access that you have across the schemas, the system will show you all the possible names with all the possible schemas wherever that table is. Let's say I'm going to type in Mara. So it's going to show me all the schemas where Mara is. Okay, Mara underscore. What we have loaded is Mara underscore CSV. Okay. So if you see this here, Mara underscore CSV is available in the schema HANA underscore SAPT. Okay, you find the table in here. Let's say if I want to search for Mara, it is going to show it up in all the different schemas that is available. You can see that the specific table that we want is available in this schema called HANA underscore SAPT. You can choose that and then you can click on OK. So you will find here that this table has been added Mara underscore CSV into the data foundation layer. You'll see the entire list of this table. It has a whole bunch of columns in here. Okay. A view can be created even from a single table, or you could have multiple tables. Let's start off with single table. So here I have the Mara table and I want to choose what columns I want to use. Alright. So I can, if you have a spec and if you know what columns you want to use, you have the option. If you see it straight away, you can right click and say apply to an output, add to an output, or you have an option here. If you want to search by an option that you have, let's say you want to go and search by MA Matner. So it will highlight that object so that you can directly go to that object. Okay. So you could use that, or you could directly use the object in here and right click on it. So I go into MANDT, right click on it and say add to output. You will see that it is being added into the columns in here onto the right. Similarly, material number, I right click on it and say add to the output. Then I want to make sure I want to have MTART. I right click on it and say add to the output, and then MBRSH, MATKL. So let's say out of all of these stuff that I have, I want to just use these 5 columns. Okay. On a view, I'm not defining any joins. I'm just trying to use this. I have an option where I can choose to create a calculated column that can be calculated at runtime apart from these columns. Okay. The view enables you to even define a column that you can calculate and give a result at runtime. Okay. So this option also is available. We're just using these normal 5 columns that I have chosen from the entire set. So in my this thing, so let's say in my table that I have under Mara underscore CSV, for the model that I'm creating, I just need these 5 columns. So I have chosen only these 5 columns. And then I go into the data foundation layer is where I've defined this structure. Okay. The next step is where I go into my semantics option. In the semantics option, I'll have to choose what is my primary key. Because in the validation rules, one of the main things that you want to define is the primary key for every model that you create. Okay. So here we have defined the column, and I have to mention what is the key attribute. The key attribute is nothing but the primary key that I want to use. So here I can see that the type here is basically defined in here. Show all is the option that you have in here. You can choose to drop this down. You can see all the attributes. You can see all the key attributes as well. If you want to define something to be a key attribute, all that you need to do is you need to drop this down and say define it as a key attribute. Okay. You can select this. The other option is you can select this particular column and you can mention this to be a key attribute. So select that. It will be created as a key attribute. Similarly, material number will be created as a key attribute. The rest of them are normal columns. Now the way you create this will allow you in your next level, when you're using a dimension in your next level like an analytic view, you will be using that as a join condition. So always choose wisely what are your primary keys and what are your key attributes. All of these are called as attributes, so the key attributes are nothing but the primary keys. Once you have defined this, you also have the option to go and define hierarchies, external hierarchies. We'll look at that on a later stage. But basically, once you define the data foundation, the second step is to define the semantic layer. Alright, so once you define that in here, you have the option to validate. Now let's see if we have missed out on any of the steps in here. You can go and select validate, and then it says completed with errors. Why is it completed with errors? So if you want to go ahead and see here, insufficient privileges, you do not have privileges to create. So my user that I'm using is not authorized to deploy an attribute view. That is the only error that I have. Okay, and then I'll have to go ahead and grant these under different system schemas for privileges. Okay, so the user that I'm using is not set up for privileges for my existing user, so I'll have to set that up. So it says completed with errors. Once you have, this is on the validation level. So you can see this here, model validation. Once you validate this, then the next step for you to do is activate. The model validates all the rules. The activation makes it available. So if I click on activation, again it says completed with errors. So this is because I am not authorized to create the attribute view on this schema for now. Okay. So you can see this here. I have created it. Even if I right click and then click on data preview, it says it cannot show the preview because I do not have the authorization. So I'll have to set up the authorization. One thing you will have to remember is, apart from the normal schemas that you create in the catalog folder, there are a few system generated catalog folders and or system generated schemas. So here if you see, these usual schemas that are generated by the system will start with an underscore, and you can see this here, underscore sys underscore bi, underscore sys underscore bic, underscore sys underscore data provisioning, underscore sys underscore EPM, undersys underscore repo, undersys underscore RT, security statistics, and access. Each of them has a specific criteria and reason for having them to be a system defined schema. The most important ones I'm going to define or let you know is underscore sys underscore bi is a schema used for time related data. Alright, so if you are creating a time dimension, you will use underscore sys, the tables from underscore sys underscore bi. Okay, so if you see in the tables or options that are here, so you have all the time dimension tables in here. You will have to generate your own time dimension. Underscore sys underscore bic is where you will have all your views created. So if you go into the column views, the models that you create, the one that we have just created is the attribute view that we have created is ZMARA, all that option, right? So it will be created as a view here, be it an attribute view, be it an analytic view, or be it a calculation view. You will be creating that in the underscore sys underscore bic. The underscore sys underscore repo is where you define all your authorizations. When you define an authorization on the schema or on the package or on the user, you will find that it is added into the underscore sys underscore repo. Alright, so I'll have to go ahead and give in some SQL commands so that I can add my schema and my user to have the authorization to create my views. Okay. Underscore sys access is for access engine, statistics, and security. You have EPM for models, data provisioning is underscore sys underscore data prov. These are all the system tables. Alright. So basically when you create your model, you have to make sure you have the schema and the user enabled for it. Alright. So this system doesn't have authorization, so I'll have to enable the authorization. Okay, so this is basically how you create an attribute view I jumped into a different system because somehow this server seemed to be not set up with the SAP HANA box activated. So that's why its authorization is not given. Okay. So any questions on what we have looked in today? Okay. I think it's a direct and a very transparent way of how you can create tables, how you can create schemas, and how you can create a model inside SAP HANA. Anybody has any questions with that? Yes, Akhilesh.
Hi, Manuel. The question I have is, when you are going through, you had mentioned different types of attributes. Have you already
Dependent and then
that? Yeah.
no, I did not. Today is when we created the first attribute and the standard model.
Okay. And second thing is under catalog, what are the different types of objects that we can that we can create? One is attributes, right? These are all within
Under the catalog, what we create are the schemas. Basically, data that you're bringing in from other systems. So let's say you're bringing data from SAP. So you create a folder called as ECC underscore data or something, and then you bring all of that data and keep it under one schema. You're bringing data from business objects, data services from a different non-SAP system. So you would create a schema there for PODS underscore that, let's say a system name, and you load the data. So that is a way of how you can keep data independent of each other.
Right.
So just like any other database, you create schemas in here. Now what we create in the catalog, in the content folder, is where we create these views that will kind of relate with each other. Okay. Now on an ECC system, you will have all of their data independently on a schema. Meaning, let's say you have a sales system, you have VBAK, VBUK, VBUP, VBAP, and then LIPS, and all of these are linked one with the other.
Right.
So if you make a change or you create a sales order, you will have that it is reflected in all of these tables. But in SAP HANA, what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring those individual tables from there, pick it off the schema, and you're bringing it into SAP HANA, right? So when you bring it to SAP HANA, these are not related. These are individual tables that you're bringing into SAP HANA. You want to go and relate these tables, and that's why you have these views. All right, that's why you have these join conditions, and all of these we will define under the package under an attribute view or analytic view or a calculation view. The basic idea is to bring in tables which need reporting at an urgency base, which needs real-time reporting, and we want to go ahead and relate these tables based on the joins that we have and then expose them to the reporting layer. So because we are bringing these tables independently into SAP HANA, we need to go ahead and define relationships again. We are not bringing the entire schema as is into SAP HANA.
Okay. Now, considering HANA is, what do you call it? It follows the star schema, right? So, or extended star schema. So, similar to characteristics and key figure, I believe attribute view would be more like a characteristic. How about key figures? I mean.
So it's a little different from comparison with what you have in the BW systems.
Okay.
You create characteristics and key figures as opposed to dimensions and measures in normal systems, right? So the attributes basically that you create are characteristics. The key figures will be defined in the fact table itself. And
Right.
you will use that within the analytic view. So it will be, so we don't have to define something here. What we are defining is a dimension here as an attribute view. All right. You don't have to define the key figures basically because you're trying to bring it from an external system. All right. You're going to use that table as is.
So let's say, for example, I'm talking about an info cube. So we have, let's say if it is a sales order, so you may have customer, you may have material, you might have quantity. So let's say just these three, this as an example. So how do we configure it here? So attributes
Let's say you have a fact table.
right.
Okay, in SAP the fact table or the item table that you're going to use, let's say, is VBAP, which has that information. So you're going to bring VBAP. The dimensions associated with VBAP are what? Your customer, your material, your vendor. Let's say these are some of the dimensions that are associated with it. So you will define these as attribute views, the dimensions, all right? And then you will link them to the fact table itself, which is VBAP. It could be VBAP joined with another table. So you'll define that as a dimension, as a data foundation, and then you will link your attribute views to it. All right?
Actually, my question is, within dimension we group characteristics, right? Similar with the similar cardinality.
Right.
In order
Right.
to define the card. So
right.
how do we define it here if that is the case?
We will definitely do it. Today I just showed it to you with one table.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right. Just to get you a little accustomed to how to create an attribute view, just to show you the steps, we will complicate things. Okay, we'll bring in more tables and see how the cardinality, the join conditions are defined. So we'll go and build on that.
Okay, thank you.
Just to give you a little idea about how we bring in table and start building a view, I just showed you this flow.
Thanks, Amanda.
Any other questions, guys? All right. So we will hold this session at this point. On my checklist, I'm going to send you the stepwise as to how to create, or the steps that we have looked into today. I'll put it up on a document stepwise. I will send it to all your emails. Please check that. It will be coming from Shrikant or Aarti. And you would be, I'm hoping that all of you are registered. You'll be given the access to the server, and we will start creating. Now, if you already have access to the server, Akhilesh, your
Emmanuel.
Yeah, go ahead. Is it Vinay? Yeah.
No. This is Venkat.
Syed Venkat. Yeah, go ahead.
I think the first day HANA recording session. So could you send us to?
Sure, definitely. I called Ravi last night and then mentioned it to him. I think he was not able to get the access, but I'll make sure that it is sent in the next 1 hour.
I think even like system access, do we need to send him again an email, or how it works? Like we have
I'll coordinate with him.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Manuel, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Regarding the timings and the schedule, let's say, I know we discussed this a little bit on Sunday. So are we planning to have during all the weekdays, or
I'll discuss that with you, Akhilesh.
Okay, thanks, Vinay.
Vinay, you have a question?
Yes, I haven't received any recorded sessions. Can you please make sure this is the 8th session, right?
No, it is not. So it'll be sent to you.
Okay, but this is session 8.
Was it sent that way?
Yeah, it says session 8, and yesterday was session 6 or 7 something.
Okay. I'll just send it to you. We had, I think they're counting the demo session and also that. So I'll be sending it to you in case you missed on anything.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
All right. Same thing applies to Akhilesh and Satish as well.
Okay.
Alright guys, so I'll see you all in tomorrow's session, same time. We're trying to just move this a little ahead because I know it's getting late for a few of you on the Eastern time. So I'm working towards moving this shift a little earlier. Alright, just give me a couple of days and then we'll work together. Alright. Take care and have a nice evening. I'll see you all in tomorrow's session. Bye guys.
Thank you.